All right. The second part of the notes, and this is actually the third video now, this is kind of where, like my grandfather used to say, the penny drops, which means everything was all hunky-dory for a while there, and now you're like, okay, none of this makes sense. These words here might not make a lot of sense to you, but I promise you with some practice, and that's today on your own and with me in class, it will make a whole bunch more sense as you do it. Okay. A set of ordered pairs, in other words, a collection of them, a group of them, or whatever, represents a certain situation, and that situation is called a relation, kind of like a relationship. Relationship means something that's connected somehow. It could be anything from like the relationship to warm weather in the summer and the amount of rain we get, or cold weather in the winter and the amount of snow that we get. Okay, that's kind of like the relation we're talking about there, how one thing affects the other. Now, with ordered pairs and with this idea of a relation, there are two things. The first thing is called the domain, okay? And the domain is the set of all the x coordinates from all the points that we're talking about. The range, on the other hand, range, are all the y coordinates. So the x coordinates together are called the domain. The y coordinates together are called the range. The number of terms, the number of things in the domain, which are the x's, and in the range, which are all the y's, don't necessarily need to match. It's just kind of where we group them. Okay, I know that sounds like super confusing, and here's basically what it is, all spelled out for us. Okay, these points, 3, 4, -2, 10, 5, -2, and 7, 0, those 4 points are in a collection, and that collection is called a relation. And we can write this relation using a bunch of different ways. The first way we can write the relation is by using a table, which I think you've done before. So the first point, 3, 4, has an x coordinate of 3 and a y coordinate of 4. The second point has an x coordinate of -2 and a y coordinate of 10. And I'm positive you've done this before, but if you haven't, this is kind of what it looks like. The other points are going to be 5, -2 and 7, 0. So all I did here was represent those 4 points in a table. Okay? Now here's where the new part comes in. The new part basically says, I want to list all my domain values, which are the x values, in one group, and we usually list them with 2 things going on. They should be in numerical order, and we put them inside of those weird brackety lips looking things. So if you can't draw them, don't worry about it, you can practice. So they go inside of things like this, and I want all of my x values, because those are what are called domain values, and you put them in numerical order. So -2 would come first, followed by 3, followed by 5, finished up by 7, and then closing it off. So yeah, those numbers are out of order, but that's how we do these. Okay, they should be in order. I'm not going to be super picky about that right away, but that is a good idea to have them in order. Okay, my domain values are those right there. My range values are my y's, and again, I'd like those to be in order. So I'll have a -2, 0, 4, and 10. Now, this becomes a much more significant issue as you take harder and harder math classes. So you'll talk more about functions in algebra, even more about them in algebra 2. And by the time you're like a junior or a senior taking like trigonometry classes or calculus classes or algebra 2 classes, this becomes a much more significant topic. We are just sort of like playing around with it now and just introducing it to you quickly and slowly in a real, like not real deep, real shallow, to kind of let you get an idea of what we're talking about. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and press pause here in a second, and I want you to do the very same thing with the second group of numbers. The only difference is this table goes up and down, not left and right. So go ahead and pause, put in that information, and see if it matches up with mine. Alrighty, so the first point is -1, 2. Then we have 5, 2, and 3, 1, and 2, -1. Yeah. Now, as you're doing this at home, and again, you've probably already done this, and I hope you did it in pencil, because here's one thing about domain and range. If you have a number which duplicates, you don't list it twice, you only list it once. So in this case, my domain is -1, followed by 2, followed by 3, and followed by 5. Okay? My range values are -1, +1, 2, and that 2 is repeated, but I only list it once in my range. If I had a number duplicate in the domain, I only list it once there as well. Sorry about that. I only listed the ones there as well because you don't duplicate numbers in the domain and range. Now, I know that's kind of confusing. It's one of the things that's hard about this new topic, but that's one of the rules. When you list the domain and range separately, you don't duplicate numbers. When you list the domain and range in a table, you list every single point as it is. Same thing if you list them as points. You list every single point as it is. It's only when you list the domain and the range as separate pieces that you don't duplicate those numbers. Okay?